there are MNCs who are not paying as much tax as they're supposed to be, and I feel like there are some things we could do to combat that. So here's the original draft of what we have come up with, and could you please take a look at it and let us know what you think?
Sure, I'll give it to you. I'll reply to you within 2 weeks, okay?
Alright. Thank you.
Thank you. Yo, bro. Some good stuff here, bro. Good stuff. Oh, okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, so this is what the government came up with, and this is how we will combat it for you. So this is what I know currently, and I will tell you more when I know more.
Okay, then we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
How did they find out about this?
Hello everyone, Peter Collins here. Together with me are Brandon, Weijie, Yujun, and Jane. The agenda of this presentation is to dive in the case of PwC Tax Scandal to analyze the ethical issues involved. This is our table of content. We shall start with the case summary, followed by the ethical issues involved, the stakeholders, impacts, and finally our recommendations. We shall now proceed on to the case summary. So in case everyone is still confused about context, I shall go through it in words. Peter Collins was a former PwC advisor. However, he was concurring the international tax chief at PwC Australia. He signed confidentiality agreements with the government while assisting the design of multi-nation tax laws. From the skit, we can observe that the Australian Treasury passed confidential information to Peter Collins. However, he leaked the information to other partners later on. And consequently, the partner emailed the information to Clarence to warn them in advance of future tax policies. Next, we shall go through in depth of the various ethical issues involved in the incident and their impact on stakeholders.
Now, let's dive into the ethical issues for this case. Our first ethical issue would be PwC's corporate culture at the time under the reign of Luke Sayers. So how did Sayers rewrite the company culture? He introduced a new business model that was more focused on sales and growth to the team, and also implemented his own personal style of leadership, such as performance matters, being hungry for growth, etc., all of which overwritten the previously conservative culture at the company. Let's take a look at the moral reasoning of the stakeholder involved in this ethical issue. In this case, it will be Luke Sayers, who was appointed CEO in 2012. His implementation of the new business model and personal leadership style all boiled down to two words: profit and growth. He was a large part of the reason why the previously conservative company culture eroded and turned into a growth-based culture. We can then apply value-based ethics to evaluate the poor company culture in PwC. This ethical framework emphasizes the importance of following a particular set of values instead of rules. In this case, PwC employees failed to abide by their own personal values and gatekeep a role, carrying out unethical acts despite knowing it is unethical. Now let's move on to our second identified ethical issue, the conflict of interest between PwC and Australian Treasury. So here's the conflict of interest, where Peter Collins is the middleman between the Treasury Office and his tax clients. So let's explore the moral reasoning of various stakeholders involved in this situation. First, we have the Australian Tax Treasury, which has an important role in analysing policies for the government to ensure strong and sustainable economic outcomes for the country. On the other hand, PwC exhibited profit-driven motives, prioritizing financial gains over ethical considerations. This sales-centric mindset contributed to the breach and demonstrates a lack of commitment to ethical standards. We can then apply principle-based ethics to evaluate the conduct of Peter Collins. This ethical framework emphasizes the importance of adhering to one's moral standards. In this case, Peter Collins failed to be transparent with the Treasury Office. He further compromised on his own principles by continuing to leak information for over a year despite signing 3 confidential agreements. As a partner, he's expected to uphold principles for other employees and affect them positively, but instead, he chose to keep silent about his connections and maximize profits. This was extremely detrimental for the Treasury Office, as they were trying to recoup large amounts of taxes that were not being paid by MNCs.
Okay, so now let me get into our third identified ethical issue, which examines how lapses in the Australian Treasury's governance and ethical oversight contributed to the PwC scandal. So as the Australian government's primary economic advisor, the Treasury has a foundational role in protecting sensitive information and ensuring public trust. This responsibility extends to collaboration with third-party entities like PwC, where the Treasury is expected to uphold stringent confidentiality and ethical standards to protect national interests. Unfortunately, these standards were not met in the PwC case, highlighting a severe lapse in duty. So one of the most significant issues here was the Treasury's lack in due diligence. In entrusting PwC with sensitive data for the multinational anti-avoidance law, the Treasury did not conduct the necessary partner vetting or risk assessment. The absence of background checks on PwC's practice, coupled with oversight gaps, created a vulnerable environment. So this lack of precaution in working with a consulting firm on confidential projects ultimately exposed critical information to misuse and private gain. The Treasury's inadequate safeguards against misuse led directly to PwC exploiting confidential data for private advantage. This misuse demonstrated not only PwC's ethical shortcomings, but also the Treasury's failure to protect public trust. Such a breach erodes confidence in government agencies and raises serious questions about their reliability. So the incident underscores the need for stronger governance measures to prevent similar breaches and maintain public trust. Various stakeholders responded differently to this ethical lapse. So for the Treasury, it's clear that they had a duty of care, prioritizing public interest and maintaining public trust. PwC, on the other hand, appeared driven by profit motives, placing private gain over ethical integrity. The general public expects government entities to uphold transparency and ethical conduct, and this breach significantly impacts that trust. Regulatory bodies like Australian Tax Office and ASIC, meanwhile, view the scandal as a call to strengthen accountability measures, both within government agencies and the private sector. So to evaluate the Treasury's conduct, a principle-based ethics framework is ideal, as it emphasizes duty and adherence to moral standards. In this case, the Treasury's duty of care was compromised by failing to adequately vet PwC, which led to the loss of data integrity and public trust. This failure also reflects a lack of transparency and accountability, which are essential to maintaining ethical governance. Moving forward, restoring public trust will require the Treasury to prioritize transparency and accountability actively, demonstrating a renewed commitment to ethical governance.
The fourth ethical issue is moral disengagement of PwC clients. This scandal exposed the loopholes in breaching confidentiality, where the exploitation of confidential information not made to the public by PwC clients have created unfair advantages over competitors and undermined the transparency and equity of a fair tax system. It was assumed that the PwC clients would have known of the partnership between PwC and Australian Treasury, and it is possible that they assumed to gain insider information in the new tax regulations from PwC advisors for their own business profits. This focuses on moral disengagement, where the MNCs are avoiding the ethical implications of using confidential data. In this tax scandal, the MNCs likely made the decisions that reflected a utilitarian approach, where their decisions to leverage PwC's confidential data were focused on maximizing profits and reducing tax burden for the benefit of its shareholders. From a business perspective, their actions are justified, as their primary goal is to maximize profit for shareholders. By receiving confidential data from PwC, it could help reduce tax burden and thus increase their financial performance. However, the failure to question the unethical means where PwC obtained the confidential information shows moral disengagement, where they distance themselves from responsibility and could easily shift the blame to PwC for breaching confidentiality. They could possibly rationalize that they were not directly involved in the breaching, since they would assume PwC as a trusted advisor to act within legal bounds and are simply receiving advice. PwC clients also lack due diligence due to the failure to verify if PwC advice was ethical and chose to trust without further scrutiny. For ethical frameworks applicable, principle-based ethics should be used, where the morality of actions is determined by adherence to certain moral principles or rules, regardless of the consequences. In PwC's case, the breach of confidentiality, where PwC shared confidential government tax policy information with its MNC clients, is a violation of the principle of honesty and duty to maintain trust. According to Keynesianism, PwC had the duty to uphold professional integrity and not misuse such private information shared from the government. MNCs had a duty to uphold ethical standards and refuse to benefit from confidential government information, regardless of the attractive financial gains. Their actions also lack virtual ethics, as they prioritize their self-interest and profit over integrity, fairness, and accountability. MNCs play an influential role in the society, bearing expectations to operate with social responsibility. By benefiting from such tax reforms, it undermines the integrity of the tax system and increases burden on smaller businesses and individuals who do not receive such benefits.
We will now proceed on exploring the consequential impacts on the various stakeholders involved. Moving on to employees. For employees who are not involved in misconduct, they may face a challenging workplace environment and may feel disillusioned due to the tarnished reputation of the firm, and this can impact morale, leading to reduced employee retention and deterring new talents from joining the firm. Additionally, the reputation falls may limit career advancement opportunities and diminish the perceived credibility of the work they have done so far. There is also a knock-on effect. This case established a precedent that lead to stricter guidelines and framework for future employees. Aside from heavier penalties for other unethical actions, such as promoting tax avoidance schemes or misusing confidential information, the government plans to enable regulators like the Australian Taxation Office and the Tax Practitioners Board with more power to act, and giving them more time to investigate employees, meaning more work for them to do. For PwC partners, particularly those are in senior positions or those who are involved in the scandal, may face potential legal consequences, reputational damage, and for some, dismissal. With 8 partners already dismissed, others could be held accountable, affecting their professional standing and future opportunities. Partners also face financial implications, as PwC's revenue and client trust may be negatively impacted, which could in turn affect their earnings and dividends. For PwC competitors such as Deloitte, KPMG, and EY are under heightened scrutiny, as the scandal has spotlighted potential conflicts of interest in consulting and audit practices. While competitors may benefit in the short term as a client seeks alternatives, they also face pressure to strengthen ethical practices and avoid similar pitfalls. Regulatory bodies may impose stricter guidelines on the entire industry, and potentially increasing operational costs and compliance requirements for all major firms.
Now moving on to solutions. Based on the ethical issues talked about earlier, our group has brainstormed solutions or practices that companies like PwC can adopt, which can help them in preventing future ethical breaches from happening. So our first solution is code of conduct. Now, I know what everyone is thinking. Every company have a code of conduct. So why is this still a suggested solution by our group? Well, code of conduct does exist in almost every company. However, surveys show that 1 in 3 companies still experience employee breaching their written code of conduct. Why is that so? Well, studies have shown that to most companies, code of conducts are treated as just window dressing. They are hundreds in pages long, and companies do not bring them out only until when something significant happens and punishments are required. Thus, the code of conduct is not something that an average employee will put in mind during the decision-making process. So, how do we make an effective code of conduct? We should increase its accessibility and visibility. Companies should remind employees the existence of their code of conduct through different ways, such as the monthly newsletter, where ethical practices across the companies will be highlighted or rewarded as they showcase the spirit of the code of conduct. Furthermore, management can welcome feedback from employees. Maybe, for example, if employees find that certain parts of the code of conduct may be challenging to abide due to the change in environment, they are welcome to discuss it with the ethics team. So our next solution is a whistleblowing policy. Whistleblowing policy is important for companies to proactively identify unethical or illegal acts among employees and address them in time. However, one common struggle still exists within the system: the moral dilemma of your professional duty to speak out, which may result in certain repercussion, or you can choose to have motivated blindness to keep ignoring the unethical acts. If a company can implement and maintain their whistleblowing policy effectively, it can deter stakeholders from breaching their duties during the decision-making process. So, how does this apply to the PwC case? Well, multiple employees have reached out to Australian Senator Deborah O'Neill that they are afraid to speak out and whistleblow in a company in fear of being a fall guy or scapegoat. As a result, unethical acts may often go unnoticed by the ethics team or top management due to the silence from fear. This issue is further escalated by another case regarding Richard Boyd. So Richard Boyd is a debt collector from ATO, and after receiving instructions from the Australian Tax Office to deploy heavy-handed tactics for debt collection, he decided to whistleblow internally. However, since investigation has been constantly dragged and made no progression, he ultimately whistleblew to the news media. This resulted in him being sentenced to 46 years of imprisonment, despite him disclosing such information just purely out of goodwill. So this case has struck fear in the public eyes and potential whistleblowers, as they may be afraid of repercussions if sensitive information like this are leaked. So in order to ensure a safe platform for employees to whistleblow unethical acts in a company, companies should encourage internal whistleblowing. Of course, this also requires the company to provide a comprehensive and effective policy in place. For example, immunity clause should be provided to the whistleblower as long as guidelines are being followed and accurate. It also provides companies the opportunity to address such issues without escalation from external parties like the media. Most importantly, the investigation team should protect the whistleblower if their position in the company is vulnerable. As such, thank you for tuning into our presentation. We hope that you enjoyed the content and skit we have prepared for you.